Manever I say ma PENDREAM TV. PENDREAM TV there, I see them yopo.
Mema wakwaba e de ba PENDREAM TV so make sure say obe subscribe to channel no click bell so say the news to our sabit me aka ntem no watie afa so make sure say obe like na wa comment no share ama afoforo so nsaka na comment section ho so no opese wo kire wa adwen obetimi e de wadwen kire ato honom na amanfo so anya bia kenkan na onim say PENDREAM TV de eye nsem a ekoso Ghana yam politics mu ne de ba na yasaka ya ne de abranti na so me video I saka pese no che na ye de ba nti me mo modern astro so obehwe video we amana si awie na wa kire wa adwen e comment section na se yenko video.
Doc, there is something called self-inflicted confusion, and that is what Richard and our friends. Yes, SIC.
SIC. Not the insurance company.
Yeah. Self-inflicted confusion.
Okay.
That is the condition that Richard and our friends in the NPP are suffering from. They have decided not to learn and understand the 24-hour economy. That is it. They have decided to close their eyes to the truth. They are scamming themselves. Okay. And so we can't help them. Very sad. We can't help them. You see, you can talk and talk and talk without saying nothing. You see, you can.
If I ask you to illustrate how you get from managing the fiscal space to 24 hours.
I'm coming.
You should ask him to show you.
He has taken notice.
So you see, Richard, you can talk and talk and talk without saying anything.
Okay.
And I think that is what you just did.
Okay.
30 to 40 minutes of just dancing around questions, confusing yourself and your own supporters, confusing your own audience without saying anything.
Say what you have to say.
First, it was, 24-hour economy. It's just a slogan. What does it mean? Then we told them that it is a deliberate government intervention, a deliberate government policy, a deliberate government strategy to ensure that certain private businesses and companies.
So remind me, when I forget, Bobo has a question for you.
All right. All right, sure. When you get to his question, I have something to say about him too.
Then I will ask you the question.
Oh no, ask me.
You go on.
I have something to say about his Chinese promotion.
No, if he's not here, you go on.
The Chinese promotion?
No.
The man has been
He must be here to speak to it.
The point is this. Mm-hmm. First, they said, what is the policy about? We said, look, this is a deliberate government strategy to create an enabling environment for certain businesses and public institutions to run 24/7 in 3 shifts of 8 hours each. Then they said, you are just saying it. You don't mean it. What are the sectors you're going to focus on?
Who said that?
Then we give them the sectors: pharmaceuticals, agro-processing, manufacturing, construction, mining and quarrying, sanitation, hospitality. We gave them the sectors, business process outsourcing and other digital solutions and so on. Then they changed the arguments. They said, the Senate cry, it exists already. There is already 24-hour economy. The thing that they say is bad. The thing that they say cannot be a primary policy consideration. The thing that they say is a scam. Now all of a sudden they turn around 360 and said it already exists. Then we said, only a few people are doing this thing. And even these few companies, they are doing it on their own. There is no deliberate strategy supporting them. They are not getting any special incentives. They are not getting any strategic financing. They are not getting cheaper power. They are not getting any security support like we are promising. And therefore, this strategy is a novelty. Then they abandoned that argument. And then they jumped onto another argument that, even if it exists already, you need to create demand for it. Demand will have to drive it. That's okay, fine. That is true. Demand will have to drive the 24-hour economy. But there is existing demand for the things we consume. And so, the problem is not that there is no demand. The problem is how industries, companies, businesses can take advantage of the existing demand. And the way to do so is by reducing their cost of production through incentives, through the time of use tariffs, that is cheaper power, to make them competitive. Then we said 2, even for cases where demand doesn't exist, demand can be stimulated with the spending power of the government to patronize such locally manufactured products to stimulate the demand. Then now they abandon this argument again, and now Richard has introduced a new one. He says, all this 24-hour economy we are talking about, we haven't told Ghanaians what the fiscal policy of the next NDC Mahama government will be to drive it. So what is your fiscal policy? What is your fiscal policy? You've not told us that. I've gone through your 60 policies. There is no fiscal policy to drive 24-hour economy. Number 1, that is where I'm starting from. Doc, in the first place, the document he's referring to is not our manifesto. John Dramani Mahama has held certain programs like the Ghana at Crossroads, the Building the Ghana We Want event at UPSA. Ghana at Crossroads was at Kimpiski. And he met those CEOs of industries. He's also been on a Building Ghana tour. So he's been addressing Ghanaians, and based on the stakeholders he meets, he announces certain policies, certain promises for them. It is these policies and promises which we have compiled together. You understand? So you won't see a section that says fiscal policy. That you will see in the manifesto of the party which will deal with thematic areas. But even with these policies which have been announced, there is fiscal policy in there which will drive the 24-hour economy. Unless Richard does not understand fiscal policy or has not read the document. Richard, what is fiscal policy? What's fiscal policy?
Fiscal policy is taxation and expenditure.
It's not taxation and expenditure. It's not taxation. It's not, okay, well, you can say taxation, but it's not just about taxation, but it is about revenue mobilization and government expenditure for economic management. But revenue mobilization goes beyond that. So, but you let's even say you're correct.
You're a lawyer.
Let's even say you're correct.
With me in
I'm not just a lawyer. Okay. I'm also a policy analyst. So don't make a mistake about that. So if you know that fiscal policy is about expenditure, right? You know it's about revenue mobilization, including taxation.
But that's
hold on.
Taxation is government revenue
I think the interjections are becoming too many. I've allowed it a number of times, but I think you have to slow down now. You know that fiscal policy is also about debt management, which is also about government revenue. And you have read this document and you are saying there is no fiscal policy. Well, let's go to number 10. The document is holding. Flip, read. Number 10. Read.
I mean, do your thing.
Abolish the payment of ex gratia and cut out waste and ostentation in government. So when a government tells you that we are going to cut waste,
not a government, a party.
Okay, if a party tells you that if elected into government, it will cut waste, that is fiscal policy. Because that is about ensuring prudence and frugality in government expenditure. Is fiscal policy. Number 2. Number 9. Flip. You say you don't see fiscal
pay
policy.
Attention to what you're
this
talking.
one is free education. Number 9. Look, run the leanest but most efficient government under the Fourth Republic by appointing not more than 60 ministers and deputy ministers in our bid to cut down on government expenditure. Is that one monetary policy? Don't you see fiscal policy here? Doc, number 6. Flip, so that you don't
engage. If you engage him, he will get
number
into the
6. Lead a process to set a standardized limit for borrowing. So the next NDC government, inshallah, will set a standardized limit for borrowing and ensure that Ghana never suffers such a deadly debt management program that threatens to send elderly people holding government bonds to their early graves and wipe out the investments of the Ghanaian middle class like it is happening now. That is not fiscal policy for you. I can go on and on and on. The fiscal policy of the NDC Mahama government, in summary, is number 1, to ensure prudence and frugality in government expenditure, spend wisely on priorities of government and not misplaced priorities and consumption, and more importantly, enhancing revenue mobilization Okay? Whilst at the same time, like I said, cutting down on the waste, on the profligacy. So, under John Mahama, allocation for Office of Government Machinery will not be 2 billion like you have done for 2024. We are going to cut down on that waste. Under John Mahama, we will spend 500 million Ghana cedis on the so-called cathedral and chop the money. We won't do that. That is fiscal policy. It is called prudence, financial fiscal prudence. That is what it's called. Under John Mahama, we won't have 126 ministers like you had during your first term. Under John Mahama, we will spend 153 million cedis, equivalent to 1.5 trillion, on a stinky Ahiagba scam that never saw the light of day and that never benefited the country. Under John Mahama, we will waste 1.5 billion cedis and $2 billion on a fraudulent PDS scam. All these state resources will be channeled into productive sectors, investments into productive sectors. That is the difference. Your fiscal policy is one of waste and profligacy. Ours will be prudence and modesty. Your fiscal policy is one of excessive taxation and excessive borrowing for consumption. Ours will be borrowing responsibly and investing those borrowed funds into productive ventures that can pay for themselves. We have done it before and we will do it again, and we don't have the time to go through that. So you expose yourself when you sit here and say, we don't have a fiscal policy, or we have not spoken about a fiscal policy to drive 24-hour economy. Doc, I hope you understand me. Once we set our priorities right, we cut down on this waste, and we begin to channel these resources into the productive sectors. It will not be necessary again for industries to pay COVID levy. And it will not be necessary for us to charge them growth and sustainability levy. It will not be necessary for us to charge financial institutions financial recovery levy. Read about our reforms for the financial sector here. It will not be necessary for Ghanaians to pay the e-levy, because we'll be ensuring prudence with the meager resources of state and the revenue we mobilize. That's number one. And that will feed into the 24-hour economy, because you are investing those resources in the strategic investments like strategic factories for the processing of cashew, processing of cocoa, processing of sugar. If you are giving tax incentives, you are not only losing revenue, because yes, you are losing tax revenue there, but you are gaining revenue through prudence in expenditure. Doc, you understand? Because the monies which would have gone to Ahiagba, the monies which would have gone to the Office of Government Machinery, the monies which would have gone into National Cathedral, you are cutting down that waste and you are using it for useful ventures that will benefit the people.
So
then number two.
Talking about the incentives. So this is what the Honorable Mesa wanted me to say. Says, we live in this country where support to existing companies under the 1-year-1 policy was condemned by the NDC to high heavens. They called it all sorts of names. Today, Sammy Gyamfi is talking about incentivizing existing companies already operating 24 hours to operate under the so-called NDC 24-hour economic policy because they are suffering. So it's like
he's created his own distortion and is proceeding to defeat it. Nobody said incentives should not be given to businesses. What we said was that you promised to build factories in every district, and you published a pie chart showing the kind of factory you were going to build in every district. You came into office and chose to do something different, which was already being done, which is using John Mahama's Exim Bank to give some support to already existing business. And we said that is not what you promised. And if this is what the 1D1F policy is about, then it was already being done under the GIPC, which was established by the NDC, where businesses, investors that come to the country through the GIPC are given incentives approved by Parliament. We were doing it under Free Zones Authority headed by your good brother Chumbuafo, where businesses under the Free Zones Authority were getting tax incentives and other tax rebates. And we were going to do it more with the Exim Bank, which we bequeath to you, which you have decided to take $10 million from for Wound to Me and the likes. So we said what you were doing is not a novelty, and that we were already doing it. And that is not what you promised. Do you understand? So he's wrong there.
So
now, Doc, then Richard says, you say you are going to be cutting down expenditure. So if you cut down expenditure, how are you going to be able to drive demand with government spending power? Richard, what are you talking about here? The expenditure we are going to cut, like I've explained to you, are those misplaced expenditures, like the expenditure on the cathedral. Look at the 2022 Auditor General's report for public bonds and corporations. Total financial irregularities from 2017 till now, put together, is more than 60 billion. That is the kind of expenditure we are going to cut. That is the kind of waste we are going to cut. We are going to cut the corruption and the negativity you are engaging in. But the productive expenditures or investments into productive sectors, necessary expenditures by government agencies will be done for the running of government business. And so when we are doing that, we will be using that spending power, that procurement power, to boost the 24-hour economy. Doc, let me give you a typical example. Government procures food for all secondary school children and basic school children. You understand? We procure a lot of food. Now, Buffer Stock is the one supplying food for the secondary schools. Primary schools, we are doing school feeding under the Ministry of Gender, right? One of the basic things these students consume, let me use two examples, sugar and rice. So under the 24-hour economy, this is how the spending power of government will be used to drive 24-hour economy sugar factories. Because currently, we import almost all the sugar we consume. We don't have any major sugar processing factory in Ghana. The one John Mahama built, over $30 million, they have left to rot. And they are trying to sell it for nothing, for a pittance. We come, John Mahama will make sure the Commander Sugar Factory is working. And John Mahama will ensure that we even get other sugar processing factory in other parts of the country in collaboration with the private sector. Why would the private sector be interested in investing in another sugar factory? Because the incentives will be there. Because the cheaper power will be there. And we are saying that because demand for sugar is so high, yet supply is so low locally, these sugar factories will run 24/7. And also Montiasia. Rice is a staple in Ghana. Government procures rice for all these schools, including even state institutions that feed their workers. Government procures that. But we have only few local manufacturers in this country with very little support from the government. And they are not able to produce to even meet half of the local demand. So under the 24-hour economy, John Mahama says, I'm using the spending power of government to promote 24-hour operating rice factories, to scale up production to meet local demand. What about this don't you understand? What about this don't you understand? That the rice factories, when they are established to run 8-hour shifts, they cannot run 24 hours. Then he says that we introduce a lot of taxes and they have scrapped tax. Maza, all the taxes you introduce, with exception you claim to have scrapped, they were not 15, that is a lie. But even if we grant you that they were 15, with the exception of one, you have reintroduced all of them, either in the same fashion or in worse forms. All of them except one. Except VAT on imported medicine. All of them, you have brought them back. And in addition to it, you have introduced numerous taxes. If we want to count, not the tax handles, but the incidence of the taxes, you get more than 40. And I've published the list. The incidence of the taxes, more than 40. The excise duty, the VAT, the COVID levy, the sanitation boiler tax, the new energy sector levy, the growth and sustainability levy, the 2% special import levy, the national fiscal stabilization levy, last vehicle tax. Put them together, more than 40. So you have no right to talk about taxation. And we are saying that, look, in creating an enabling environment for businesses to run 24/7, it is not just the tax incentives. It is also about trade policies like strategic financing. It is also about providing the security. It's also about cheaper power. You are not happy that those running 24/7 will get cheaper power through time of use tariffs? You are not happy about that? Then, Doc, he says that you have to build a factory first before you talk about 24-hour economy. Look at I mean, the paucity of ideas. What will attract a private man to build a cashew processing factory in my region, Bono? What will attract a businessman, an investor, to come and build a cocoa processing factory? It will be the incentive that exists. Look, you know this. So you don't say, come and build, and when you finish, I'll give you the incentives. The incentives are what are used to attract the investments. Because they know that when we come and invest, there is a 24-hour economy strategy that we can take advantage of to operate 24/7 round the clock to produce more, and that the government is ready to patronize the products and therefore create the demand for us, even if the demand, assuming the demand does not already exist, and that we are going to get cheaper power, tax rebates, and so on to reduce our cost to be competitive so that we can compete against cheaper imports. And so it would then make sense for investors to make such investments.